I am here today with Doug Santos, one of our loan officers in our Danvers, Massachusetts branches. Thank you for joining me, Doug.
Of course. Anything for you, Em?
Here at North Point, we are interviewing some of our top loan officers just to kind of get their story and learn a little bit more about them. So, just to start us off, Doug, if you want to kind of talk to us about how you got started in the mortgage industry, how long you've been here, what brought you to the industry.
This is going to be my fifth year. I got into the mortgage industry during COVID, and it was a very strange time. I graduated college. I was online, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to become a cop. I studied criminology and sociology, and I almost got into life insurance prior to the mortgage industry. And one day I called my foster dad, and I said, "Hey, I think I'm going into do life insurance." And he was like, "Hold on, before you do that, let me call one of my good friends." He ended up calling my old branch manager, and my old branch manager had me come into the office, sat down with them. To be honest, I didn't know much about what I was getting into. I kind of just trusted my foster dad and his opinion. So I went in. He said, he asked me what I wanted to do. I told him I wanted to help people, and he said I could help a lot of people, getting into their own homes, and I just needed to get licensed. And I told him I was very confident I'd pass on the first try. I just got out of college. I've taken midterms, finals, for the last 4 years. Should be a walk in the park. I quickly got humbled. I failed my first time, and then I failed my second time. And then finally, on the third try, I actually booked it for my birthday, October 1st. And I passed. It was probably one of the happiest moments of my life because, this was my career I was getting into. And passing that test was just a weight off my shoulder. And then from then, I just been helping as many people as I can.
That's awesome. And that's very brave of you to get into this business during COVID when a lot of
Yeah,
people were getting out of it. So I think that that's also been a huge help to your success. If you can be successful during COVID, then you're just going to keep
sure,
going.
of course.
Um, what's been the most rewarding part of being a loan officer for you?
I would say 100% closing day. It's the day where you sign the documents, you sign the paperwork, everything that, there's a lot of emotions when you're buying a home. Sometimes, good emotions, sometimes bad emotions. And to see it all come together at the end and, the realtor giving them their keys to their home, that's by far the most rewarding part.
Definitely understandable. Um, what would you say your approach to working with first-time home buyers is versus a more experienced buyer?
So first time home buyers are actually my favorite. They're green. They don't know what they're getting into. I kind of get to be that person that guides them, consult them on what needs to be done. Some people that may think they're not ready to buy a home may actually be in a very good position to do so, but they just never reach out to somebody to, you know, entertain the idea. And I think that's where I come in and I let them know, like, it's scary. Yes, it's scary, but that's because you don't know. You just don't know the process. You don't know what it's like, and it's a big deal. You're buying a home. Not It's not like you're going and buying a piece of furniture. You're buying an actual home, and that could be scary for a lot of people. But what I've come to realize is that it just matters on who you're working with. Somebody that's going to guide you from start to finish and help you with every step of the process, whether it's your credit, whether it's your income, whether it's your, savings, whatever it may be. And I think that's my favorite part with first time home buyers. Now, there's obviously people out there that I also helped who has, bought two, three, four, five properties and they know the process, their experience. So we don't have to get into as much detail with them. But it's still rewarding. Once we have a clear to close in, 10 days, because you're dealing with somebody who knows this process, who understands on what it takes. And yeah, those are there there's two takeaways. There's good from both, and I appreciate both.
Awesome. And I'm sure since you do work with a lot of first-time home buyers, this has come up. But what do you feel like is the most common misconception people have when they get their first mortgage or a mortgage in
Oh,
general?
there's there's more than one, that's for sure. There's more than one. And I was a victim of that. I always thought you needed a boatload of money to buy your first home. And I think that's the biggest one out there is people think that you need, you know, 20% down to buy a home. And what I quickly realized was that there are so many programs out there for first time home buyers that allow you to get in with as little as 3.5% down, even 3% in some cases. So I think that's the biggest misconception, in addition to, thinking they need a perfect credit score. That's another big one. You know, like an FHA program, 3.5% down as long as you have a 580 credit score. Nobody would know that. Everybody thinks you need a perfect credit score and 20%. So I would say those are the main two, of
Oh, those are definitely good things to kind of dispel for people.
course.
Uh, can you share a story about a particularly memorable or meaningful loan that you closed?
I had a buddy of mine who actually reached out a few years back, probably, when I was probably 2 years into the business, and he wanted to buy a house. We put an application together. He had a credit score below the 580, and we drew out this whole entire plan on like how to get to where he needs to be. And then he reached out to me last year, and his credit score, he followed the plan to the T. He got, his credit score up, his income was better, and we ended up putting 3.5% down on a multifamily. Now, there were a couple of things that, went wrong with the property. But we were able to work it out with the listing agent, and the listing agent actually ended up crediting him $10,000 for his closing costs. So the reason this one kind of hit home for me is because he had a family. He had kids, he had a wife, he had everybody kind of depending on him, who also depended on me. So we got everything almost to the everything almost closed, and this thing with the property came up, and we had two options. It's either back out or we try to come up with some more money. And thankfully enough, I was able to get on the phone with the listing agent and kind of explain the story. And thankfully, the listing agent was very understanding, and they ended up crediting him $10,000 to close on the property, and we were closed, and he was thrilled, thrilled. And obviously those are my favorite, is once we go through something that's kind of dramatic during the process and we come to a solution and get to the end.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you really fight for your clients, which I'm
Yeah,
sure
of
they very
course.
much appreciate.
Of course.
Um, so switching gears a little bit, what keeps you excited about the future of the industry or what you see happening?
Sure. So I got into the industry when interest rates were at 2.5 to 3%. They've nearly doubled. Actually, they have doubled. And what I think is the most exciting part is that there's never a bad time to buy real estate. And I have firsthand experience with that. What I believe is, if you can afford a mortgage, if you can afford rent, you can most likely afford a mortgage. And obviously, sometimes, it may be a little bit more than what you would be paying for rent. But at the end of the day, you're putting that money in to your own investment. You're essentially paying for your own house. And what I say to people is, you get in now. Yes, interest rates are a little bit higher, not the best case scenario, but there's a very high chance of interest rates going down. And when interest rates go down, people tend to people tend to want to come into the market and buy homes then, because interest rates are low. Now, what happens then is you're competing for the same amount of the same property. And for the people that have bought the homes, all they get to do is refinance. They're already in their home, and then they get, either if you put down 5%, you get rid of the mortgage insurance, you get a lower interest rate, overall better monthly payment. And that's key. That's why I always say it's never a bad time to buy real estate.
No, that's great advice and a great take on, just the whole buying process in general.
Right.
Um, so for the last little section of this interview, we are going to do something a little different. We're going to do a little rapid fire random questions. So
Okay.
just first thing that comes to mind, no wrong answers.
Sure.
So, coffee or tea?
Coffee all day.
What was the first concert you ever went to?
It was Travis Scott. Actually, scratch that. It was not Travis Scott. It was oh, it was actually Mac Miller. Mac Miller. R.I.P. Mac. R.I.P.
What is your dream vacation spot?
I would say Dubai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What is the most used app on your phone?
Most used app. I would say first thought was Instagram.
There, that's probably
Yeah.
what. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I like to consider myself an early bird.
Gonna say
The last couple months have been a little off, with moving and getting the house ready, but early bird.
good, good. Um, if you weren't a loan officer, what would you be doing?
Ooh, I would either be running my own strength and conditioning platform or
Nice,
business
I can see that.
or a police officer. One of
Nice,
those two.
fair. What is one mortgage term you'd love to erase from people's vocabulary?
I'd say PMI, because the people don't understand the difference between PMI and MIP. Those are two differences that are huge when it comes to whether you're going conventional or FHA.
Fair. Okay, and to wrap it up, what is one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
One thing people would be surprised to learn about me is that I speak three languages:
Which are
Portuguese, Spanish, and English.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to add in?
All I would say is if you're looking to buy a property, okay, yes, it's scary, and yes, it's a big deal, but I promise you, if you have the right people guiding you, it will be worth it. That's
Very
it.
true. And what's the easiest way for people to reach you? Phone, website, email, let everybody know how to get at you.
Ideally, a phone call. I'm big on, just getting on the phone and talking to people, and emails are kind of, I hate waiting on responses back or sending a response, and you know time is money. So um I think emails, I mean, I think a phone call is the best way to reach me. You can reach me right on my cell phone, and I don't want to put that number out there because I'm thinking about getting a new phone to
Okay.
separate my business from personal life because it's all
Right.
intertwined.
Yep. I get that. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today, Doug. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And yeah,
Thank you
keep
for having me. I
keep being
appreciate you.
our keep being in our top 10.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.